On this channel I mainly focus on classic sports watches from Garmin, Polar, Suunto and Coros, but I also look at how well traditional smartwatches like the Apple Watch perform for athletes. Both types of watches are completely different and can't be compared. Or at least that's what you might think, because in reality, smartwatches and sports watches are not as different as you might imagine anymore. The two most popular models from each are likely the Garmin Fenix 8, considered the pinnacle of sports watches, and the Apple Watch Ultra 2, seen by many as one of the best smartwatches. I've been testing both watches thoroughly over the past few weeks and have compared them from every angle. In general, I've been wearing Apple and Garmin watches for many years, so I feel I have a pretty good understanding of the pros and cons of both brands. In this video we are going to dive deep into all of these details so that you know which of the two is the better choice for you, the Garmin Fenix 8 or the Apple Watch Ultra 2. So let's dive right in, have fun. Even before purchasing one of the two watches, you will notice a first difference. While there's basically just one version of the Apple Watch Ultra 2, the Garmin Fenix 8 gives you many options. You can choose between an AMOLED display and an MIP solar display. I've actually made a separate video comparing these two display technologies, which you can find in the description below. Then for both display types there are different sizes to choose from. Personally, I've tested the 47mm AMOLED Fenix 8 and the 51mm MIP solar Fenix 8. The Apple Watch Ultra 2 has a 49mm case, which falls right in between these two sizes. It's immediately noticeable that the two watches have different shapes. The Fenix 8 is round, while the Ultra 2 is rectangular with rounded corners. Specifically, the Ultra 2 is 49mm only in height, but 43mm in width. So in terms of size, it's closest to the 47mm version of the Fenix 8, which is why I'll mostly focus on that model in this video. Additionally, comparing the AMOLED version of the Fenix 8 makes the most sense because the Apple Watch also uses an OLED display. With the Fenix 8 you can also choose between a sapphire and non-sapphire version, and I went for the sapphire model. So what you see here is the 47mm AMOLED sapphire version of the Fenix 8 and the Apple Watch Ultra 2 Black. For this version of the Fenix 8, both the bezel and the back of the case are made of titanium, the display is protected by a sapphire glass, and there is a protective element on the side. The watch is generally super durable and high quality. The Apple Watch Ultra 2 is also highly durable. It also uses sapphire glass and titanium for the case, and like the Fenix 8 it has that protective element around the case edge, although here it's more pronounced and fully encloses the two buttons. At 14.4mm, the Ultra 2 is slightly thicker than the Fenix 8 at 13.8mm, and its case weighs 61.8 grams compared to the Fenix 8's 52 grams. However, if you go for one of the MIP models of the Fenix 8, you'll get a slightly thicker watch at 15.2 or 15.4mm, and the weight will range from 57 to 67 grams, putting it somewhere between the Ultra 2. Aside from the different shapes, both watches look quite similar on the outside. They are both very robust and high quality, typical outer watches. Which style you prefer is just a matter of personal taste. One more difference is that the Fenix 8 has an LED flashlight built into the top of the case. Some people might scoff at this feature, but those who have used it over extended periods of time often don't want to live without it anymore. Personally, I love this feature and use it quite frequently. The Apple Watch Ultra 2 doesn't have a built-in flashlight, but it does offer a flashlight feature that just turns the display as bright as possible, which is useful as well, but definitely more cumbersome than for the Fenix 8. Another interesting thing to note about durability is that the Apple Watch Ultra 2 was initially released in this natural color in 2023, which I have also tested at the time. In 2024 a new black version was introduced, and I noticed that this black model is a bit more prone to scratching, or rather scratches are more visible on the black case. Price-wise, the 47mm AMOLED version of the Fenix 8 currently costs around $1,100, with prices ranging from $1,000 to $1,200 depending on the model. The Apple Watch Ultra 2 is somewhere around $800. But yeah, both watches are pretty expensive, which is why you should consider your choice carefully. And that's why we're now going to take a closer look at all the other differences between the two watches. Another key difference lies in the displays. As I said, I'm talking about the AMOLED version of the Fenix 8 in this video because that makes for the fairest comparison. But while both watches in this case have the same display technology, there are still differences. First, let's talk about display size. The Fenix 8 has a 1.4-inch display, while the Apple Watch Ultra 2 comes with a 1.92-inch display, which is quite a significant difference. But what stands out even more is the brightness. The Fenix 8 can go up to 1000 nits, while the Ultra 2 can reach 3000 nits. points. The Ultra 2's display isn't exactly 3 times brighter in practice, but it's definitely brighter. Overall, I have to say that the Ultra 2 definitely has the more beautiful, brighter and more vibrant display. In terms of operation, the Ultra 2 is also noticeably smoother and faster. With the Fenix 8, the operation is a bit more laggy and slower compared to the Ultra 2, where everything is super fast and responsive. These differences in display and operation simply reflect that both watches have a different focus and target audience. Apart from the many useful features, of course, smartwatches are also meant to look nice and be fast, while sports watches are mainly designed to be functional. This also ties into battery life, which we'll take a look at now. While the points in the areas of display and operation clearly go to the Apple Watch Ultra 2, the Garmin Fenix 8 takes the win in battery life by an even clearer margin, as there is a vast difference between both watches in this regard. The Ultra 2 has better battery life than the regular Apple Watches of the Series 10, 9, 8 and so on, but it can't remotely match the Garmin watch. According to Apple, it lasts up to 36 hours with regular use and up to 72 hours in power saving mode. The 47mm AMOLED Fenix 8 on the other hand lasts up to 16 days in normal use, 7 days in always on mode and 23 days in power saving mode according to the manufacturer. When running, the Fenix 8 uses about 2% per half hour, which totals around 4% per full hour. With the Ultra 2, it's 4 to 5% in 30 minutes, meaning close to 10% per hour. In total, the Fenix 8 can easily handle a marathon and a full day hike. Even with multi-band usage, this AMOLED version can last up to 35 hours, and the MIP version can last even longer, especially thanks to its solar feature. Last year, for example, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro with the Fenix 7 Pro, recording 10 to 12 hours of hiking each day, and I had to charge the watch the first time on day 4. The Ultra 2 lasts about 10 to 12 hours during training, so you could definitely finish a marathon with it, but it might struggle during a full day hike, and for multi-day expeditions it would certainly hit its limits. In normal use, the 47mm AMOLED Fenix 8 lasts about 10 to 12 days for me, while the Ultra 2 lasts only 2 to 3 days. So both watches are really in entirely different leagues when it comes to battery lives, which however was to be expected. So far we've mostly talked about the hardware of both watches, but let's now focus on the software side of things. In this video we are not going to cover all the features of both watches, as for this I already have separate in-depth reviews for both of them, which I have linked in the video description below. In this video we're going to focus on the differences so that you'll know which of the two watches is the better choice for you. When it comes to sports and training features, Garmin clearly comes out on top. But don't get me wrong, the Apple Watch Ultra 2 really offers a lot. It has countless workout modes including multi-sports, triathlon, open water swimming and many more common and some more unusual sports. You can also display numerous stats during your workout, including advanced metrics like stride length, cadence, vertical oscillation and ground contact time. In the app you can also see additional data and stats for each workout. The watch is also suitable for scuba diving up to 40 meters with a depth and water temperature sensor. Garmin on the other hand only introduced this diving functionality with the Fenix 8. Models like the Fenix 7 Pro weren't really dive ready. The Fenix 8 however features new so-called leak-proof inductive buttons. The Ultra 2's training mode offers everything that most athletes might need, and since the WatchOS 11 update in summer 2024, it also includes a widget for long-term training analysis. In the familiar activity app you now have an extra section for your training load. After each workout you can rate its intensity on a scale from 1 to 10 and you'll see that rating in the workout summary. For 17 sport profiles like running, cycling and so on, the watch assigns a value automatically, though you can adjust it as needed. This becomes the basis for assessing your training load. Here your training load for the past 28 days is calculated and then your training load for the past 7 days is compared to that. This allows you to see whether you're currently overloading or underloading your body or if you're right on track. So in these graphs, the right line represents your training load for the last 28 days and the other line represents your training load for the last 7 days. And then you can see if your acute load is well below, steady, above or well above your long-term training load. This kind of long-term training analysis was completely missing from Apple until this WatchOS 11 update, so it's great to finally have it on board. We know something similar from Garmin where it's called chronic load, acute load, and the resulting load ratio. In Garmin's version it results in a specific number, so one specific value for your training load. Most people probably don't know how to interpret these numbers, so Apple just uses percentages. To be honest, I'm a fan of these specific numbers that Garmin provides because by this you can also compare data over a longer period of time like months or even years, while for Apple you can only do this for 28 days. Also, it's worth noting that Apple's training load widget is certainly useful for athletes, but Garmin offers much more in this regard. For example, Garmin has the training readiness widget, which breaks down all the factors affecting how ready you are for your next intense workout, which is your sleep, recovery time, heart rate variability, training load, sleep history, and even your stress levels. For each factor you can see whether it contributes to your recovery or if there's room for improvement, and it all leads to a summary score of your training readiness. You also have the body battery, which shows how much energy you have left for the day, and the training status feature, which tells you what kind of training stimuli you're currently applying. The training load focus widget gives you insight into anaerobic, low aerobic, and high aerobic loads. All of this data is derived both from your workouts and your recovery phases and then combined. Garmin's features in all of these areas are very well developed because the company has spent years and years to analyze the data from countless athletes to create very refined analytical tools. All these widgets work together in Garmin, which makes the whole system much more useful. You can use the Garmin Coach in the app to create training plans, and you can see animated exercises on the watch. The Apple Watch Ultra 2 doesn't have this kind of integration. One advantage is that you can access the App Store to add more features, getting closer to what Garmin offers, but to truly match Garmin's functionality, you'd likely need to install several different apps and keep switching between them. Garmin's system is just much more integrated, especially for serious athletes or data geeks. A notable new feature of the Apple Watch introduced with the WatchOS 11 update is the so-called Vitals app. This app gives you an overview of your key health data, including heart rate, respiratory rate, skin temperature, sleep duration, and blood oxygen levels. Before, there were already separate apps for these metrics, but now they are all compiled into this single app. You can also see if any of these values are outside the normal range, and you might get a notification explaining why. Garmin, on the other hand, has similar features like the morning report, which gives you a summary of key data when you wake up, or the health snapshot feature, a quick 2-minute test that shows your key health metrics. Both watches offer comparable data for sleep analysis, and even though sleep tracking with smartwatches and sports watches in general is just around 80% accurate, both watches provide similar values for sleep duration and stages, as well as resting heart rate and blood oxygen levels. But let's get back to the training mode. The Apple Watch Ultra 2 has a lot to offer here, but Garmin still adds a few extra features. For instance, the Fenix 8 shows live stamina data during your training. This displays your available energy reserves, both short-term and long-term. After the workout, the Fenix 8 also shows the impact of the session split into aerobic and anaerobic training effects, along with a suggested recovery time. Additionally, Garmin offers advanced features like Pace Pro and Climb Pro. With Pace Pro, the course profile is analyzed and a pace strategy is developed. So in steeper sections, the pace slows down, while in flatter terrain, it speeds up. You can also create your own strategies, like starting slower during a long run and gradually increasing your pace. The Climb Pro function helps you manage a course with many ascents and descents. It shows when the next climb is coming, how long it will last, and how steep it is. These are all very advanced features that probably not everyone will need, but especially for very ambitious athletes they are very useful. So in this regard we can see that the Apple Watch Ultra 2 remains a classic smartwatch, while the Fenix 8 is a typical sports watch. Building on my previous point, we also need to discuss the smart features, because as I said, the Apple Watch is a smartwatch while the Fenix 8 is a sports watch, so in terms of the smart features, the Apple Watch Ultra 2 takes the lead again, obviously. However, it's not as much of a gap as it was compared to the Fenix 7, as the Fenix 8 now comes with a built-in microphone and speaker for the first time, which allows you to use voice assistants like Google Assistant, Siri or Bixby. You can also give offline commands. For most queries, such as checking the weather, you need a connection to a smartphone or the internet, but things like setting a timer or starting and stopping a workout can be done without a phone and without an internet connection. Thanks to the microphone and speaker, you can now also make calls on the watch, play music, listen to voice messages, record your own voice messages, and there is even a new voice notes app. This allows you to record your thoughts, for example, while out with just a watch and no phone. Additionally, Garmin Pay lets you pay contactless with the watch, although there still aren't many compatible cards, especially here in Europe. And here the difference to the Apple Watch becomes clear. As mentioned earlier, the Apple Watch is a classic smartwatch, so it can do all the things the Fenix 8 can do in this regard and better. You can of course use Siri as your voice assistant. It has a 3 microphone array to reduce wind noise during calls, 2 speakers, it warns you in noisy environments, you can use gestures for controls, and for contactless payments you have Apple Pay, which works with far more banks and cards than Garmin Pay. One major difference here is that the Apple Watch Ultra 2 can establish its own LTE connection, so with a compatible mobile plan you can stay connected with the Apple Watch when you're out running, even when you don't have your phone with you. Garmin's only model with this LTE option, to my knowledge, is the Forerunner 945 LTE. Many people were hoping for this feature to be included in the Fenix 8, but unfortunately it isn't. To round off the smart features, I also have to mention something that probably most of you already know, and that is that the Apple Watch Ultra 2 only works in conjunction with an iPhone, while the Garmin Fenix 8 works with both iOS and Android. Another point that's likely very important to many of you is navigation. With the Apple Watch Ultra 2 you can't navigate in the classic workout mode. While you can use the usual Maps app, and since the WatchOS 11 update you can also load offline maps, you can't use navigation in the pre-installed workout mode. Which means that you can track a workout and use the Maps app, but you have to switch back and forth between the two apps. While this is possible and fairly quick, from a sports perspective it's not an optimal solution of course. With the Garmin Fenix 8 navigation is of course available during workouts as well. You get topographic maps with all kinds of details like street names, points of interest, ski maps, golf course maps, and you can use the backtrack feature among many others. The Fenix 8 is essentially a whole small navigation system. You also have the round-trip routing feature, which lets you set a specific distance and the watch will suggest various routes that bring you back to your starting point with this distance. The Fenix 8 can even dynamically recalculate the route if you stray from the path. You can use this in workout mode and even see data fields with stats alongside the map during your workout. This brings us to GPS accuracy, and here both watches use multiband GPS, which is pretty much the state-of-the-art technology to track your routes. I didn't notice any significant difference in accuracy. Both watches tracked my routes accurately, whether running through the city or cycling through countryside or forests. The distances recorded by both watches were in agreement as well. For an extreme test, I ran the same route back and forth on a narrow forest path, and as you can see, both watches recorded the route very accurately. You could zoom in and maybe find that the Fenix 8 in red is slightly more precise than the Ultra 2, but you'd have to really scrutinize the data to spot the difference. Overall, in terms of GPS accuracy, both watches performed equally well. In addition to GPS accuracy, I've also checked how accurately the watches can track heart rate. Over the years, I have consistently had the best results with the Apple Watches. Not only the Ultra watches, but also the regular Series 10, Series 9, Series 8. The Apple Watches have always been the most accurate watches I have tested. So even in harder to track activities like strength training, the Apple Watches performed quite well, while other watches typically struggled. So let's take a look at the Apple Watch Ultra 2 and the Garmin Fenix 8. Here in this and the following images you see the heart rate curve from a chest strap in red that I use as a reference. The Ultra 2's data is shown in blue and the Fenix 8's in black. This is from one of my runs. Both watches are very accurate with their curves closely matching the chest strap data. The average heart rate readings are less than half a beat per minute off from the chest strap for both watches. The same applies to cycling. Both watches performed very accurately here as well. However, things get interesting during strength training. Here you can see that run curve in particular deviates more from the chest strap, and that's the black curve of the Fenix 8. This becomes even clearer when we look at the results of both watches separately. So I'll briefly hide the Ultra 2's curve. As we can see, there are significant deviations between the Fenix 8 and the chest strap. The average heart rate is also off by nearly 9 beats per minute. Now here's how it looks for the Ultra 2. It's clear that both curves here are much closer together. Even during the workout I could feel that the Ultra 2 reacts much better to rapid changes in heart rate compared to the Fenix 8. So once again it has been proven that Apple simply offers the best and most accurate heart rate measurement. Alright, so what's the final verdict? Which watch is better? The Garmin Fenix 8 as a smart sports watch or the Apple Watch Ultra 2 as a sporty smartwatch? As you've likely noticed throughout this review, there is no clear winner. The Apple Watch Ultra 2 offers a better, more beautiful display, is faster and smoother to operate, has superior smart features, and currently the best heart rate monitoring. The Garmin Fenix 8 on the other hand offers a significantly broader range of sports and training features, and all these features work together much better as well. Plus, its battery life is vastly superior to that of the Ultra 2. In terms of pure sports functionality, the Fenix 8 is certainly the better choice. However, it comes down to how many of the features you need and how many days or even weeks of battery life you actually require. With the WatchOS 11 update, the Apple Watch Ultra 2 has definitely narrowed the gap between a classic smartwatch and a sports watch, and as exactly this hybrid solution, it's certainly a great option for many people out there. But now, let me know in the comments section down below what you think of both watches. Which one do you prefer and why? I'm aware that this might be kind of a controversial topic because the fans of both Apple and Garmin are typically quite confident with their opinion. I've just tried to present both watches as objectively as possible and share my thoughts transparently. So, if you found this video helpful or interesting, you could really support me and my work here by giving it a quick thumbs up. Also, if you don't want to miss any other comparison videos like this or reviews in the future, you should definitely consider subscribing to this channel. But for now, thanks a lot for watching and see you next time.